Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Today I want to talk to you about these new cards that I just saw in the Splinterlands Discord. This is the Eye Candy channel. If you haven't seen them, you should go check it out. But we're going to talk all about it right now. And these are just my first impressions. I haven't looked at these except for 5 seconds of uploading this one picture onto my window here. And so I don't exactly know what I'm going to say about these things, but I hope that my first thoughts, my first reactions here are going to be exciting and interesting for you to hear. This one looks amazing. Let's go card by card and we'll try and talk about what we see. We'll talk about, utility. We'll talk about considerations within the rank battle. If we can see any sort of discernible impact that it would translate to within the meta, and so on and so forth. Everything I can imagine. It might be a longer video. So if that's something you're into, make sure you stick around, stay tuned, like and subscribe. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Dwayne Cunningham and I go by Infidel 1258 on the channel. We cover Splinterlands all day, every day, because it's changed my life. And I actually think it can change yours too. So definitely stick around, guys. So again, this is found in the Splinterlands Discord, which if you're not a member of, you should join. There's no cost to that. You just go ahead and join the Splinterlands Discord. And then there's an Eye Candy channel, which is where we're located here. And as of today, which is September 12th, I see that they really only 2 hours ago, they dropped these. And I was recording a video for last hour, so I couldn't get any sooner. But Night Ghoul is the first, and he's the Death Splinter. I think these are... I haven't seen the word Behemoth written here in any fashion, but I see that he's an 11-mana monster. And I know I've heard about quote-unquote behemoths. I think the behemoths are something altogether different, so we'll see. But because I don't see any sort of title of that nature, but I just wonder if this is one of them, I guess is what I'm getting at. But we'll see. So he's called the Night Ghoul. We've seen this artwork before. This is one I'm not a huge fan of in terms of the artwork because it just is a bit too gory for me. And, I suspect, maybe I'm alone in that, but it's just, I think, divergent from where the Splinterlands art has been historically. There's been far more, I would say, PG, and this is a bit dark, I would say, for that from that audience. So I'm just not sure about that one. However, it looks amazing. I'm not saying the art's bad. It looks amazing. It's just a bit of a shock to me to see that sort of obviously the hands and the claws and the quite feral looking, right? And even the detailed musculature. So art wise, I don't love it, but I'm going to say it's very talented creation. And then let's look at the abilities and some of the levels. So it's a common card. That's indicated by the color coding there. It's a Death Splinter card indicated by the skull that you see there. And you can see at max level it's kicking out 6 melee damage with 4 speed, 6 armor, and 11 hit points. That's a beefy tank. So what else we got here? Force field is super huge. Because often we see, more increasingly, I think the game is having some of these monsters that do huge hit point damage. And then you get your force field. Interesting too, by the way, because it's a giant. Being over 10 mana, this Night Ghoul is a quote-unquote giant. Meaning, if your card has Giant Killer, it would do twice damage to me, the Night Ghoul. But that almost certainly would trigger you doing more than 5 damage, which would be reduced to 1 due to this this force field. And so that's an interesting synergy. It's like he's vulnerable to Giant Killer, and yet he's not. He's like not at all. Interestingly. So that's pretty cool. Now he's quite vulnerable to magic, of course, but the rule set depends. Like if it's this is great amount of armor. Death doesn't always have there's very few death that have a ton of armor like that. That's more of a life thing. Of course, there are some monsters with some armor, but I don't think anybody has 6 armor, and that's out of the gate. So you could throw more on them, right? And in a rule set where weak magic happens, then this is gonna protect you against magic, making it a 17 hit point monster. Now he doesn't have shield, he doesn't have any void, he doesn't have any other sort of limiters on the damage, but that's almost beneficial because force field, the way force field works is it's almost good if your opponent is going to throw 10 damage at you or 5 damage or 6 damage at you, because that force field is going to get procced and you're going to drop that damage incoming down to 1. Whereas if this guy had a shield or a void or whatever, it could theoretically, well, I think it might even, no, that wouldn't necessarily be bad, but it's often, I've never seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that combined. Shield, force field with like shield. I don't think that exists yet. I'm not sure how that would play out, because if you had that, the one incoming damage would be reduced to 0, I think. So I don't think that would potentially that would be a possibility. And then the enrage, holy cow. So enrage increases your speed and your melee damage output by 50%. So your 6 damage would turn to 9, your 4 speed would turn to 6, and that's without any sort of buffs. If you put on an Inspire on your team, this could be a really amazingly damaging monster. And I would argue, I mean, it seems really powerful to me. Now, especially in the modern, we have already seen, or maybe you don't know this, but Death has definitely lost its kind of main tank. I would argue that their old main tank was Lord of Darkness, who is right here and is amazing and does, at the highest levels, does 4 damage with enrage, so it becomes 6 damage due to the buff on the enrage. His stun and shield and retaliate, so he's a killer. He's a main tank. But in the modern, he's a wild monster. He's old from beta. When you look at Untamed, Dice, and Chaos Legion, that's the modern, and there are some reward monsters in there too that you should look at. But when we look at the modern league, there isn't so much a really strong tank, I would argue. There are some decent ones. Pellicore Deceiver is okay in situations. Undead Rex is okay in situations. Nightmare I like a lot, but he isn't that real slugger. He's more of a sustain tank because of his phase ability and high speed. Who else? You know, Riftwing is like an off tank for kind of low mana matches. Crypt Beetle, the same thing. So lots of interesting tank type cards. Gorlodon's a nice secondary tank. Dark Juan is a fine and very strong main tank, but so expensive at this point. I don't know that that's really on the consideration for many of you. And so Curse Windiku is an excellent tank, but I'm going to say again, he isn't, and even Harklaw, both good in their own ways. Bone Golem too, I haven't mentioned yet. They're all 3 of these ones are probably they're strong main tanks, but I would say situationally. And none of them is, in my opinion, as good as, for instance, a Lord of Darkness. Not even close. And so then I see this new card and I think consider it a strong consideration for main tank. His biggest vulnerability is going to be at those lower levels where he doesn't yet have force field, because as a giant killer will have its way with Night Ghoul. And when you look at cards such as we go over here quickly, let me just go and watch this. We'll go giant killer. So all of these monsters are going to have their way with that card. And some of these monsters, depending on what level you play at, right? If you're playing, this one gets piercing damage with 5 damage within silver and retaliate within gold. So hang on, let me just go back here. This thing's going to get common card, level 5, no force field. So level 6 is force field. So it needs to be at level gold to get its force field, which means in the silver levels, it is going to have a lot of hit points. But I'm going to tell you that like I'd rather have a Desert Dragon, because one, trample or piercing is probably more impactful. Piercing with 5 damage, and still the other one's got a lot more hit points, doesn't it? Yeah, maybe I would rather have. I'd rather have the Night Ghoul. But let's see. Would I rather have Grum? Giant killer at gold. Would I rather have Legionnaire? Legionnaire is going to have your Giant Killer at silver, which is going to have, and it has a good hit point base. So I'd probably rather have Legionnaire. Chaos Knight is going to have Giant Killer at silver. So this thing's going to be putting out significant damage, but it is quite small in comparison. My Silic Infantry is going to have gold. So you know what? All of the potential Giant Killers don't really start to take effect. This one does. This one's going to have silver level Giant Killer. Double damage, magic. This will be a real counter actually, but you're gonna. So the Murat is, of all the Giant Killers, the Murat is actually the one that's going to be the most. No, and the Jinn Murat, wow, or the Jinn Inferni. So both of the Jinns are going to really put punishment onto the what's this guy called again? The Night Ghoul. Because one, he doesn't have Void Shield, and because two, in the silver or bronze, you're not going to have that force field, and as a result, these two Jinns, which do magic damage, are going to cut to your heart, skip your armor, and do Giant Killer damage at bronze with the Jinn Inferni, turning 3 damage into 6. Wow, this card got a buff today. And then the Jinn Murat turning 2 damage into 4 damage is great, because you remember your Night Ghoul up until silver is only going to have 10 hit points, which is still a lot. But magic is the play before force field, right? And then as you start to get into force field with Giant Killer, force field's going to change the conversation, because that's going to mean that Giant Killer is less effective. So very interesting card. At silver and bronze, I think it's obviously super strong, but vulnerable to those 2 magic monsters I just showed you. And then at the higher levels, it becomes less vulnerable to Giant Killer, and yet still equally vulnerable to like a 3 and a 4 magic damage output. So I feel like the one last point to make here: force field continuing to get stronger and stronger and stronger, because more and more monsters do 5 damage or more. But you guys who have certain key monsters that you love that do 3 and 4 damage, those are always going to be so penetrating, because first of all, 4 damage is a lot. And second of all, it is not ever going to be impaired by a force field. And so in that way, 4 damage is almost an ideal target, especially as we get more and more tanks that have force field. 4 damage is like gonna sneak under that cap. So force field's very strong. Night Ghoul looks amazing. I'd say he instantly jumps into the conversation around best death tank for the Modern League. We'll see, but like I think he's in the conversation. Tinderlock has amazing artwork. I love this one. He looks like something out of Borderlands, 2 or something, don't you think? With that type of flamethrower gun, looks like a badass. He also kind of looks. He makes me think somehow stunt bicycle, motorcyclist, the way he's got like flames on his jacket, and yeah, but it's really cool. I like it. 10 mana, susceptible to Giant Killer, archery monster, huge speed, huge hit points, close range. Wow. Okay, so close range, last stand, dude, death blow. Hang on a second here. So this thing with conceivably, so last stand I think gives you a 50% buff, I think, on your speed and your damage output. And your close range allows you to fire from that first position. And then if you put this with a how am I forgetting his name? The legendary fire summoner, Jotun. You put this with your Jotun, he's getting last damage, he's getting close range availability. He's going from 11 hit points to I think 16 or something like that. He's got silence, so magic is going to be impaired by your opponent, which is a great support ability. Love to see more and more of that. And then the death blow is going to turn the 6 damage from a last standing Tinderlock into a 12 damage, I think, because it doubles it, I believe. So this is a wild card. I think this is every Jotun owner is going to love this card. If we break it down a bit more and we see that it got at lower levels, it's going to have still the last stand and close range. right away, level 1 of this card is so important. At every level, that card is going to be desired. Wow, last stand at bronze with the close range. This card is amazing at bronze, I would argue. Because you're going to throw it in that back line when you have higher mana matches. And we already know from the recent Town Hall that bronze and silver bronze is going to have more higher mana matches in the near future. So Tinderlock, I feel more strongly about his impact. Not that I like Night Ghoul. I think Night Ghoul is, I just said, probably the new best tank for the black team from the modern. But Tinderlock to me strikes me as deeply powerful and impactful, especially in relationship to the lower leagues and specifically Jotun. And yeah, powerful. And then as you get into, he's rare. So as you get into silver, you have access to the silence. That's cool. And then you're still doing the 3 damage output. When you get into gold, you get more hit points. When you get into Diamond Champion, you're getting into that death blow and the increase in speed and damage. Of course, this guy's problem is going to be he is super vulnerable to death blow himself, which is unusual. Like, death blow is not a card that I usually, or not an ability I usually feel applies as a meaningful ability, and this Tinderlock is susceptible to it. So that's one thing. Another thing is he doesn't have any armor. 1 armor would be so huge for this guy to have. And lastly, because he's going to, 2 more things. He's a giant, so giant killing is going to be a problem he has to deal with, and he has no sort of shield or void or force field, and so he could be deleted really quickly if your opponent picks the right cards. And lastly, his damage will far exceed the 5 and therefore be capped by force field. So if he's shooting at force field tank, good luck. You're not going to be doing much, because he's going to be doing, like I said, 6 damage, double 12 damage. No piercing either. So that's in some sense going to hamstring him. The fact that he has no armor, no sort of self-sustain, and the fact that he will be giant kill a bull, and his damage output will be diminished by force fields, are his limitations. But this is a strong card. I guess as I think about it more, I still like Night Ghoul more, but I like Tinderlock a lot. And I think Tinderlock, yeah, I like them both a lot. Okay. Corsair Boson. This is how I think of Splinterlands artwork. To me, this is Splinterlands art. It's kind of, first of all, it's excellent. It's artwork. And second of all, it's colorful. It's clean. It's, it's not like if this sword was, for instance, covered in gore, that would be a different type of game in my opinion. But to me, this rings, accurate, true from what I've seen from the Splinterlands art team. So that's cool. Another giant, 6 attack, 3 speed, a bit slower, something like the Night Ghoul in sort of stats, output, damage output, speed, roughly, the armor and the hit points. Like I said earlier, life is very commonly associated with the high armor, so I find that's that's in keeping. Ooh, this is a reach monster. Are you kidding me? This is a reach monster, meaning a secondary position tank that's going to drop these huge bombs, and he has the reflection shield, which means he's not going to be blast damaged. This is going to work so friggin' well with the shield bearer in the first position. The shield bearer is a white team tank with taunt. Shield. What do you mean? Did I spell something wrong here? Shield bearer right here. Oh, because it's one word. The shield bearer has the taunt, and therefore is going to attract all attacks. And then in conjunction with Grandmaster Wraith, making your shield bearer activate the armor to protect you from magic. So the shield bearer is amazing already, but I think he's getting a buff as you enter into a partnership with this new Corsair Boson. Boson? because he's got that reach. He's doing crazy damage. He's got that reflection shield. He's even got cleanse to help protect any sort of poison from against your bearer. Wow, this is a strong tank, and I would argue that he is less susceptible to giant killer because he's in that reach position, and you're theoretically going to partner him with that taunt monster. This seems like a very strong card, not just because of its abilities and its stats, but because of its partnership and how effective I can imagine it working with the existing kind of meta of the white team with that shield bearer. So reach is amazing. Love what it does. Again, maybe if I have to be critical of it, it's like it does so much damage that it will proc your opponent's force field and thereby nerf its own damage. But it's so good. It's very strong. I love it a lot. I'm gonna want a max copy of that. Watercolor. Ooh, this artwork's sick. Looks like she's singing and like kind of conjuring or controlling the direction of the water through her voice. That's really cool. 3 damage, 2 speed, stun, another stunner. That's great to see. 5 mana. This looks like a replacement for the old mermaid, which was a water magic monster with relatively slow speed that did stun. Another reflection shield monster with a good amount of hit points. So this looks like a secondary tank next to, for instance, the Kraken. The Kraken's got a taunt on your blue team, and then you put this in the second position, and you're going to get that reflection shield plus a stun, which is always helpful. Good amount of damage output. At the lowest levels, it's only giving you 1 damage output, but it's got that stun. At bronze, you get almost 0 monsters that have stun. So this is huge. This is really, really helpful for your bronze warriors out there. I would argue for even any level, like silver and so on, gold, you're going to want another stun monster. Stun is so important between the combinations between stun and knockout, between the rule sets where every monster gives knockout. And then I think that reflection shield at the higher level is going to be deeply impactful, especially if you have the Kraken. And the Kraken's a super expensive card, but if you already have it, this is giving more value to it. So amazing card. Love the artwork. Super strong. Surprising it only has 1 magic output at bronze, but still that stun is so helpful. And like I said earlier, just quickly, this reminds me a lot of the wild mermaid. No, it's not called the mermaid. What is it? Water beta. Might be a promo. There it is. Medusa. Medusa got the stun at level 3, which is I think silver level player. Might be wrong about that. Might be bronze. But either way, low level stunner, magic monster, limited damage output, but gets to be 3 eventually with decent hit points. And it's an old beta card. So there you go. Kind of a replacement or a throwback. Definitely like that one also. I do have the Kraken, so I'm definitely going to want that. See, the problem here is you've heard me guys talk about, like, I'm not sure how deep I'm going on Rift Watchers, but as you look at these cards, you know we got 2 days and such, 2.5 days until Rift Watchers launches, and you look at these, and I know that this video is going to create desire in you. And what is that going to do to our eagerness to buy these packs? And there's only 3 million packs. There is not enough push and shove. That's the thing, right, guys? I don't know how to say that name. Suide Shaman. Oh, I like this guy. I saw this art well before they showed the abilities. This one looks amazing. 3 damage, 3 speed, 9 hit points. Okay, I like the style. Do I like the card? First of all, it's not giant killer. That's okay. That's cool. Green is already so magic friendly, so you like to see another magic monster. In my opinion, this makes Obsidian stronger still. One of the best rare summoners in my opinion. Okay, 3 damage is great. For 8 mana, is that okay? You got 3 speed, you got a good amount of hit points. What do you got over here? Oh, this is one of those recharge monsters. I don't love recharge monsters. You got giant killer though. On that second turn, you're going to drop a bomb, right? Because recharge doubles or triples, I forget. Let's see. recharge. Oh, not recharge. That's not what I wanted. Yeah, recharge. Yeah, so recharge triples your damage every other round. Triples. So then you're going to do 3 damage, which turns to 9 damage every other round. And then you're going to giant kill monsters who are 10 or more, which means you're going to do 18 magic damage on your second turn. This is a gigantic response to what they've already created over here, which is the Night Ghoul and the Corsair. So the green is a real response to what these 2 tanks are offering, and maybe even this one, right? Because it's going to just straight delete any 3 of them. Any of them. All 3 of them just go gone in one blow. Straight, because the magic is going to cut through past the armor. Now, mind you, this guy, the Corsair, is sitting in the second position, presumably because he's a secondary tank with the reach, and so he is not going to be susceptible to this Shaman's attack in the same way. But holy cow, I would say the Shaman is going to respond, is going to effectively delete pretty much all of White's existing tanks. I think this is a really strong, this is, as far as recharge monsters go, I figure this is one of the most powerful. And recharge so far has been underwhelming. I think this does amazing things because, one, armor is so important lately. There's so much more armor in the game. And so it's always good to see rust. That's great. 2, this combination of things with the magic is going to just absolutely destroy, I think. Now, can you build a team around it that allows this guy long enough to get his shots off? Maybe use the Mycelic Slip Spawn to create that taunt, which is a distraction. In the front, you maybe get your Grund to do some attacking, and because of the rust on the Shaman, you're taking away some of your opponent's defense in the first place, and then the Shaman fires in the second round and deletes even the biggest hit point pool. And so I like this one. Although it might be the first recharge monster that I feel positive about, because I do own the others, but I'm going to say that they've been underwhelming. So let's quickly finish with just kind of like a like best to worst. And I'm going to try and speak to that from the perspective of how they fit in with their existing infrastructure and supports and the synergies that are on that team, available to them on that team. Obviously I like the Shaman a lot. I also like the Corsair a ton. Now, the Night Ghoul and the Tinderlock and the Watercolor are all strong. But I actually think... So I think Night Ghoul and Shaman are the 2 most important, powerful monsters. And Watercolor number 3. Why? And then we go into Corsair and Tinderlock in that order. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Hang on, which one's 4? 4 Corsair, 5 Tinderlock. Why? Because the Ghoul is standalone, an amazing tank, and even at bronze is an amazing tank. And of course he's susceptible to magic attacks, but it's still so strong. And yes, he's susceptible to giant killer, but of course you can't, you don't always know, your opponent's not regularly going to counter you with giant killer. That's going to become increasingly a problem for you. But I think for the near future, I suspect this card will be really powerful until giant killer gets more and more common in the game. So Night Ghoul is a strong tank out the gate. He's the best tank, in my opinion, for the new modern death team, and therefore takes the lead here from the best of the 5. The Shaman's number 2 because I think it answers, first of all, it synergizes well with Obsidian, who is a strong summoner already. Second of all, its kit really synergizes together. It's doing magic, it's eliminating, it's doing rust, which is great because if you are contributing any archery damage or melee damage, you're gonna really delete your opponents that much faster. Plus the combination of magic with recharge, with giant killer, and the increase, and you know what I feel about giant killer, it's gonna get more and more important. that thing is just doing so much crazy damage. So that's number 2 because of how it synergizes with Obsidian and how much damage output it theoretically can do. And even its sustainability because of things like the slip spawn and how that could be a distraction, letting your shaman live longer. So that's 1 and 2. And then I said watercolor number 3 because I think it requires, it's not higher, it's great, it has that stun, and it's going to be impactful at bronze all the way up. It's going to be a card most of us are going to absolutely want. So why isn't it higher? Well, part of its power is really in that you would have a taunt like the Kraken to put this next to and to take advantage of. And most of you don't have the Kraken, and most of you never will. And so maybe there will be new taunt monsters that will really work together well with the watercolor. I would think that would be an awesome thing to see, and if that happened, you'd want to probably buy. But I'm saying right now, as I imagine the cost to sort of set up the water deck you'd want to run with the watercolor, I'm going to argue that would be just too expensive. And yet it's an amazing card, and so it's number 3 on the list. Number 4, the Corsair, because this thing again, just like I said with the watercolor, is almost dependent on you having like a strong, like a really great water tank or sorry, life tank to partner with, like a primary life tank. And you probably have some life tanks that are really great, but do you have some of the more expensive ones that exist out there, like the Shield Bearer? Do you have the Silver Shield Paladin? Do you have like some of the best tanks that are on the white team? And there are many, many good ones, are really expensive. And so who are you putting in front of this beast? If you've got a great tank, then that's awesome. But if you don't, you know, although it's an amazing card, and I definitely think you're going to want it, I think he is weakened by a lack of a partner. And so that's why he's lower on the list, because he's more dependent on having that partnership. Whereas the Ghoul is standalone, and the Shaman is not standalone, but most of us have the Mycelic Slip Spawn. It's a modern card with tons of print rate and so on and so forth. So again, and then we finished the list off with Tinderlock, because some of his greatest significance would come from partnering with Jotun, and Jotun is so exceedingly rare and so exceedingly expensive. It just feels like that's an unlikely thing for most of you to have, and as a result, its worth and value drop lower. But if you have a Jotun, this thing is indispensable, I would argue. And I love this card. So obviously, I love all the top 5. They're all amazing. I want them all. But I think when I compare to the strong list of cards, and due to the fact that the fire synergy that would be best equipped for him, now you could partner him with Conqueror Yasik, and then you can get the speed buff, and that'd be interesting. But I just think, or even I maybe even combine him with the new Dragon Summoner, which gives phase, and then you're gonna, when you go into Last Stand, you're gonna have a significant speed, and you are gonna dodge a lot. That's interesting. But again, those are partnerships I'm calling on. I'm saying you got to have this legendary summoner or that legendary or that epic summoner. And it's like when there's a necessary partnership to really get the most out of him, I think that's where he falls to the bottom of the list. Whereas again, going back to Ghoul, this thing could be good with any of your summoners, and it'll be good straight out the gate at bronze. And so is it perfect? No, it's vulnerable in many respects we already outlined, but it's number 1 on my list. Guys, what do you think? Tell me your top 5. Which one's the best? Which one's the worst? Thanks so much for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.